Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everyone. Special thank you, by the way, to Alexis Levinson, who filled in for me last week. Next week, programming note, Bill and I will both be on vacation. But I listened to your episode with Alexis, and it was quite concerning to me, Bill, when the person filling in for you knows more than you do, you get a little scared.
I totally did not think during that episode that she was dramatically better than you. I mean, the farthest thing from my mind was that she would be a extremely enjoyable and pleasant replacement for you on a week-to-week basis. That was not on my mind whatsoever.
She's also not smarter or better looking than me, but that's beside the point. Alexis, it's weird when, when the protege surpasses the mentor. And she is out there, man. She's sourced. She talks to people. All the things that I really try to avoid, she's doing. And clearly
people should recognize, even though she's at the National Review, which of course is a conservative organ, she plays it straight. She is doing, she's not approaching her job through an ideological prism. She's reporting on the Republican field to serve a conservative audience, but to give them a straight dispatch of what's happening on the stump. So even if you're not a conservative, you should consider giving the humble National Review a few of your generous clicks and see what she's up to.
She's great, Bill, and her reporting's awesome, top notch. I mean, look, it's like Robert Costa was at National Review before he went to the Post, and we've talked before about how it's a mistake for Republican candidates to assume that Fox News is going to give them, preferential treatment or throw softballs. I think it would be a mistake to think that a National Review reporter on the trail is not going to thoroughly report what happens. So keep an eye on that. Check her out, Alexis Levinson. Follow her on Twitter. She did a fabulous job filling in, which is why she will never, ever again fill in for me.
So. Now, speaking of conservatives being hard on Republicans, are we at a turning point with Trump? It's nothing can keep Trump down. No matter how many people he offends or how many conservatives he riles, the poll numbers stay strong. But you just did a bit of a critique of the mindset of the Trump voter. Jeb Bush last night, and there were dueling town halls. Both Trump and Bush were in New Hampshire. Trump's out there doing his standard, Bush is a loser. He has a smaller crowd. He's low energy. He can't make America great the way I can. But Jeb did the first, Rand Paul did an ad that's along these lines, but Rand Paul is, on the verge of not being invited to the next debate. Bush is still around 10% in most polls, which in this race is top tier. And he laid down the brief against Trump at the town hall. He's been a Democrat longer than he's a Republican. He was for single-payer health care until very recently. He gives more money to Democrats. He proposed a tax on assets. This really sort of animated Bush. This was worse than an income tax, a tax on your wealth. That's not conservative. Having an immigration plan that's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars is not conservative. I think some people commented that, Bush's delivery is sort of never, nothing is as energetic as Trump. But is this the beginning of a real test to Trump's conservative bona fides that over time Trump won't be able to defend because everything Bush is saying is true?
Yeah, it's all true. I don't know. Who knows if or when it will ever matter. I mean, I interviewed John Hawkins of Right Wing News on my podcast.
Is Hawkins on Team Trump?
He's not on Team Trump, but he likes Trump, and he was, we were debating the merits of Trump. And by the way, subscribe to my podcast, Matt Lewis and the News, and listen to this. It was, I think, a very interesting conversation. We debated this, and John's a very smart guy, and I think you'll get
Hawkins is really conservative. Like, this is not someone who is unorthodox, I think, in any way. And so, what is his rationalization?
He runs a site called Right Wing News.
Right, there's no sanding of the edges there,
But he's also a good guy, whom I've liked, and so we had we have the capital, the reservoir of goodwill to be able to aggressively debate each other and not be and not start hitting each other.
So when you put that critique to him, here are all these non-conservative things Trump has said. What is his response to that?
So basically, the response is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he said because all these guys have flip-flopped before. Republicans don't do anything. They can't. They say that they're going to take down Obamacare, but they don't do it. They say they're going to try to stop Planned Parenthood. They don't even have the guts to do that. And who knows?
This is the Cruz argument.
Essentially,
Cruz hasn't flip-flopped.
I think if you push John Hawkins to vote today, he probably would actually vote for Cruz. But basically, he's not. It doesn't matter what Trump said in the past. It doesn't bother him at all. It's what he's saying now. And so it does. My point is, and I think this is true of a lot of the people who support Trump. Not that Hawkins necessarily does, but he's defending him. But it's you can have all the evidence you want that he was a liberal fairly recently, and it actually doesn't matter. They don't even care. It's meaningless because he's saying it like it is. He's he's standing up and fighting and taking down the politically correct wimps, the people who were wimps in the past. And they believe that he will build, for example, they believe he really will build a wall. I think Hawkins said that in the podcast, that he actually believes that he would. And Republicans have been promising this for years or decades, and they never actually did it. They believe Trump actually will do it.
But on almost everything else, I mean, it's one thing to dismiss things said in the past, people evolve, blah, blah, blah. But there are things he's saying today which are not conservative, or at best, a lot of his answers come back to, well, you got to be flexible. I'm not going to give you a 14-point plan because I need to go into a negotiation and be open-minded to what other people have to say. I mean, that is not a recipe for conservative purity. It's the exact opposite. So
he gets away with it, though. I think you just need to accept he gets away with it. He gets a pass. He's special. The rules don't apply to him, and so that it is what it is. And it's funny because he can say, "Look, I'm a great negotiator. I think you got to go in and bargain with people. I think you got to cut. I'd cut deals with Nancy Pelosi. I cut deals with Harry Reid, and nobody minds that. But imagine
that is the exact complaint. That is the complaint."
I know,
of the Republican establishment.
It's astonishing, but it is what it is. I think we just have to. I didn't write these rules; I just abide by them. I think we just have to accept it for it is what it is. And
why? But I don't believe that. I don't believe this is a sustainable position for Trump. I mean, as good as he is doing, it is still about 25%. It is short of what you need to win most primaries. You can probably win. The early ones, you have some examples where people have won with 26. When the candidate is when the field is broader, but as that field narrows, that ends up being not enough. The bandwagon effect has to kick in.
All right, Bill. But okay, let me throw this at you. Add up the Trump vote plus the Cruz vote plus the Ben Carson vote plus, I mean. There's close to 50% of the Republican primary vote that is for Trump or Cruz or Carson.
Well, that's a big assumption that those second choice votes automatically go to Trump. I mean, what has historically happened, as we talked about in the past, is that hard right vote never consolidates around the anti-establishment candidate. And the establishment candidate tends to consolidate faster with closer to 40 or so, and that person gets the bandwagon effect. And I got to think that establishment's that's going to kick in. The closer a Trump nomination seems more real, that pressure is going to kick in. And here's Jeb playing to the Cruz base and the Carson base, saying, hey, you think I'm not a real conservative? Look at this guy. This guy's the phony. I have a record of conservatism in Florida. This guy's never actually executed conservative policies his entire life, and I have. So I think Bush has a lot to work with there.
You're talking rational now. You're talking rational. You're using logic and reason.
Rationality wins out when you get closer to Election Day.
That's the hope. That's the hope. And I talked about this on Morning Joe the other week, that the hope is that people are dating Donald Trump, but they'll marry Marco Rubio or something. That Trump's fun, he's entertaining, he's exciting, he's not, but you don't bring him home to mom. By the way, interestingly, I had this, John Hawkins and I again on the podcast debated the entertainment thing, and I argue that it's a little bit, we had Kennedy, who was good on TV and dashing, but he had also been a congressman and a senator. And we had Reagan, who was an actor and was entertaining, but he had been a 2-term governor of California. And now we've sort of gotten, to the reality version of that, reality TV version of that, which is Donald Trump. And I see this as a very problematic trend. Hawkins really embraced it and saw it as no, it's great. Republicans need to be entertaining. We need to compete. He talked about his website, Right Wing News, that, politics is entertainment. And there's stories about Katz next to stories about Kate Upton, next to stories about Donald Trump. And if Republicans want to be relevant, they have to be entertaining. And we shouldn't be lamenting and hand-wringing about this. We should be celebrating that we actually have a guy that people are talking about. I'm just saying it's very interesting, and he made some compelling arguments. I think it's worth people's time if you want to know how people John is not crazy. He is very smart, but he sees the world differently than I do. Why they support Trump? Give this a listen. It was enlightening as to why that is.
The Trump fan mind. Now, I have a piece that's been filed. It's not up yet. I think it'll be up, by the end of the week, or maybe even early next week. I was asked by the good people of Politico to envision what would Trump's first 100 days be like, and I went back to them and I said, I want to do this for real. I don't want to do this as a joke. I want to actually. What if it really happened? Because you're seeing some stuff floating out there now. You mentioned to me there's a Free Beacon satire piece, done in tweet form, what Trump's inauguration would be like. And John Lovett, former Obama speechwriter, has a piece up with The Atlantic where he talks about, remember the first budget crisis, the Trump impeachment, the Cruz swearing in, the second budget crisis. And Colin Campbell, a Business Insider, had a tweet that went viral, where it's a imagined readout of a Trump summit meeting with African leaders, and he was like, the Ethiopian prime minister, he's a loser. The bathrooms there were third world. The airport was disgusting. But so what I said was, look, we actually have. I think you actually tweeted out this article from Richard Brookhiser from the Wall Street Journal that there's a history of Americans looking for an outsider to save our broken politics. In the 18th and 19th century, and even the 20th century, it was often generals who would swoop in and save everybody. And more recently, it's the tycoon, Ross Perot, Michael Bloomberg.
Well, and by the way, that goes back to Too Dumb to Fail. Right. The book, which is making me incredibly tired, and
don't make the blurb on the book jacket. It's less low energy. Don't be a loser.
I won't be a loser. But no, one of the things, as you know, Bill, because you read the early draft that I talk about, is Andrew Jackson. being the first pop. We had the founding fathers, these elite intellectuals, and they were the first 5 presidents. And you have John Quincy Adams, the son of President Adams, and one of the most capable and sort of experienced men to become president was John Quincy Adams. And he gets beaten by this outsider, Colonel Jackson, I guess. And that is really a turning point. That's the first time we go from these sort of elites to this populist outsider. And there was a line, a slogan that was, it was John Quincy Adams who can write versus Andrew Jackson who can fight.
Right.
And I'm just saying this theme is being, it's fighting now is more metaphorical, but we are not that far from those days.
Right. Now, so he talked about the generals and the tycoons. I said there's a third category of these so-called patriot kings, and that is the celebrity blowhard. And I think Trump is more in that category than the tycoon category. And we have 2 recent examples of that type of person winning. We have Jesse Ventura, who became governor of Minnesota. And we have Arnold Schwarzenegger, who became governor of California. And so I think those examples are instructive because their first 100 days in both cases was good. They didn't set the curtains on fire. They didn't go. Jesse Ventura said some off-color things.
Andrew Jackson probably did set the curtains on fire.
Right.
He threw that lavish party, right? And
right.
Anyway. So yeah, they did. Okay, but anyway.
But Jesse Ventura, he filed his budget in on time. He crafted some tax cut compromises with both parties. He protected funding for light rail. That was controversial, but now there's light rail running from the airport to the Mall of America, thanks to Jesse Ventura. Schwarzenegger, when he first came in, he made a big deal about a what they called the car tax, which was a higher vehicle registration fee that Governor Gray Davis had put in. He repealed that administratively. He got the legislature to repeal a law that gave driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. That was also a campaign issue of his. And it got some of his initial fiscal reforms through by ballot initiative in a few months. So there's a lot of, happy feelings early on in both cases.
Have you written this? This needs to get out there.
The draft is written. I haven't got the edits back yet.
So this could be the case for Trump. You could get lots of
wait.
clicks.
That's not the end of the story for either one of them.
If you want clicks, I think it should be, Bill. Let's just end it right there. The case for Donald Trump by a liberal. I like it.
So you can take that 100-day example and say, well, what would Trump 100 days be like? Well, he would do what he could by executive order. He'd rescind Obama's immigration executive actions. He can do that. He talks a lot about China's currency manipulation. He could direct the Treasury to label China a currency manipulator. That's doable under the current law. And that would then be a precursor to imposing new tariffs on China. Could do that. He has said, though, that he was asked recently about the Iran deal. Would you rip it up on day one? He was like, I'm a deal guy. I'm not comfortable ripping up deals. Those are sacred. But I would
what he said
was,
he said, I'll go through it. Nobody's better at taking a bad deal. I will go through every line and make them strictly adhere to every single. Now, because the Iranians are actually going to be doing their own inspections, apparently.
That's not really true, right?
No, I don't know. Tell me. I just saw a headline.
The headline is in relation to past nuclear work. It is not applicable to inspecting current and future activity. So the side deal between Iran and the IAEA
Oh Lord, hang on, somebody's calling.
All right.
Don't call me, people. Send a mercy tweet, an email, a text. This is my work phone. Nobody should even be calling me here. If it rings again, I think we need to answer it and put him on speakerphone.
Never call.
Don't call.
The moral of the story.
Unless, the very few. Maybe if it's Roger Ailes and he wants to offer me a show, then I really apologize for that. Otherwise, you can text, email, smoke signals,
carrier pigeon, telegraph.
I mean,
fax,
look, if you can call me,
fax.
Bill, you can call. We have that kind of relationship.
Right.
You
Call
can
me
call.
maybe.
But you would know better than to call that work phone number. Let me tell you, I'll tell you what this is 9 times out of 10. Either I'm currently missing a radio interview that I've committed to, which is always possible, or this is, I wanted to confirm that you got the fax or the press release or the email that I sent. Don't do that, people. Don't do that.
Anyway, to pick up on the around point, so this does not change the deal in terms of their current nuclear work. So the IAEA is still the inspection agency for what happens now, not what happened in the past. And so for Trump to say, I'm going to police that deal, well, he can only police it so far because it's the IAEA inspectors that are going to get the information that will determine our actions. Now, he hasn't been asked this question in terms of TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, which presumably would get approved before he became president. Not a certainty, but probably. To take him to follow his logic, he would not rip that up either, even though he doesn't like it. But he would police it. And there, like Obama with the World Trade Organization rules, Obama stepped up enforcement of WTO vis-a-vis China. There's been a lot more enforcement actions that have been, and complaints that have been filed with WTO. Trump could be very aggressive in how he employs the dispute mechanisms in TPP. That's something he can do by himself. Now, but anything he wants to do involving Obama's regulations, much more complicated. He can't just say on day one, no more climate regulations. That's gone through a formal bureaucratic process that he legally can't just undo by himself. He has to embark on his own regulatory process if he wants to undo it. And that is susceptible to legal challenge because he could be accused of not following the law, not following the Clean Air Act, if he chooses to not take pollutants seriously. So that's not simple for him. Anything about Congress, Congress is almost surely going to be Republican House and a Senate where either party has the numbers to filibuster. So the bulk of his immigration package has to go through Congress. So he has to make a 100-day decision. Here's someone who says, in his own words, you have to be flexible. You have to go with the punches. You can't be boom, boom, hard and fast. That's a quote from Trump. So he's going to have to decide, do I want to have a fight over immigration where Democrats and probably even a few Republicans would love to cut me down to size, block my plans, and prove that I don't always win, I don't always get my way. Or he could start with infrastructure, which is something he also talks about it to a fair degree. There already is bipartisan legislation to create an infrastructure bank. The Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO already back it. That's a lot more fertile ground for a quick score. So if he's being rational, and again, I can't presume rationality when it comes to Donald Trump, that would be, if he was following the lines of what Ventura and Schwarzenegger did, going for the low-hanging fruit in your first 100 days, that's what he would do. And so he would have a lot of impressed onlookers who knew Trump would be so chivalrous, so conciliatory, so easy to work with. You probably legislators say, "Oh, he's so charming. He sweet talks me. He takes me to the cigar tent the way Schwarzenegger did." Excuse me. Let
me ask you a serious question though first.
Yeah.
Now I know you wrote a book don't move to Canada.
Yeah.
Right. But this is should I fear if Donald Trump were to become president? I don't think I'm important enough to be at the top of his enemies list, but I think I might be on the enemies list.
Well, you got to get ahead of Krauthammer and George Will. I think you got some big boys ahead of you.
Yeah, no. But then again, people might miss Charles Krauthammer if his column if he wasn't on special report. It might be obvious. Like, the serious question is, like, do I need to move? And it's not going to be Canada, because we've already established I don't like the cold weather. Where would I not? There needs to be no extradition. Where do I, like, how seriously do I need to take this?
Well, number one, I would move to Vancouver, which has a much more pleasant climate.
On the coast, right there. Yeah, you get that.
But number two, that's Trump's first 100 days. Now, the end of Ventura and the end of Schwarzenegger were a lot less pleasant. Now, it's not saying the curtain's on fire, but they both were unable to master the legislative process. In Trump's case, he was always prickly. He didn't like horse trading. He got hung up on...
In whose case?
Ventura.
In Ventura's case, okay.
He got very hung up on a pet project, with changing the state legislature into a unicameral nonpartisan body. And the legislature had no interest in that. That chewed up a lot of time. And the early tax cuts he got passed, they created a budget deficit later on. That was a big problem for him. And so eventually Ventura just saw the writing on the wall, bad poll numbers, I'm not even going to run again. He only did one term. In the case of Schwarzenegger, he got reelected, but also he got heavily reliant on bonds and borrowing. And so the budget deficits doubled on his watch and left California in a terrible fiscal state by the end of that. And also ended up with having very little accomplished in the legislature. Got some things done. I mean, it wasn't zero, but
I would say though, in defense of Donald Trump, okay. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura were both in Predator. I think we can agree to that. They were both. I mean, Jesse Ventura was a professional wrestler. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a bodybuilder who was a movie star, so maybe that took some business acumen. And he was married to Maria Shriver, and he campaigned for George H.W. Bush. So he sort of had a foot in politics. But Donald Trump has never been elected to anything, but he has been a businessman who has made business deals, who has been involved in negotiations to an extent where, I mean, maybe Jesse the Body Ventura was involved in dealing with his signing a contract.
He was the mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. But, look, he had to deal with Vince McMahon and the signing a contract with him and all that. But
there's nothing comparable to negotiating with 535 Congresspeople. There's nothing comparable to negotiating with foreign leaders who have plenty of...
But wouldn't you say that Trump is more prepared for that?
No. I mean, this is
Jesse the Body Ventura.
This is the end point. People thought in all of these cases that having a big personality who was untethered to traditional politics would magically reshape how politics worked. That they would run the special interests out of town, they would knock heads together, and politics would be changed forever. And it very quickly became apparent that that's not how reality is. And the disappointment that materialized by the end of their terms soured people on that kind of politics and more traditional politicians. Jerry Brown became governor because he did an ad where he had Meg Whitman, the Republican nominee, another business person who had no political experience, showing how her rhetoric was literally identical to Schwarzenegger's rhetoric. And he would just do ads that just had them one after the other. And that was enough to, he was wildly outspent in that race because Meg Whitman had unleashed her personal fortune and he crushed her. So the point about Trump is it's probably not the case that the world would end because we have constitutional checks and balances that would constrain how far he could go. But if you think that he's going to just magically change how Washington functions, you're going to have the same bitter disappointment that Minnesota had with Ventura and California had with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, thankfully, I do not suffer those illusions, Bill Scher. But I think this sounds like a great piece. It sounds like a really interesting piece. I like it. It's right in your wheelhouse. This is what you do. This is what you do better than anybody.
I appreciate that, sir. But I don't want to talk about Trump. We talk about Trump a lot, and you say nice things about me a lot. So let's not always go there.
I think that more of that needs to be done. More Trump and more Bill Scher.
Trump Scher 2016. I imagine, I saw a tweet of yours where you said that Hillary Clinton and Sarah Palin are worse communicators today than 2008, which...
I stand by that.
I personally disagree with that. I mean, I think Hillary has been a sharper communicator. I mean, 2008 was terrible. But obviously,
I'm not saying she was Cicero or Demosthenes in 2008 either. But she's just gotten worse. But
she's obviously having a tough time with the email story. How severe a problem do you think this is for her?
All right. Well, I'm writing a piece for the London Telegraph about this. So let me just go through a little bit of what I've written here, and we'll talk about it. First, what we know. Clinton used a private server to carry out State Department business as Secretary of State. About 30,000 of those emails have been deleted and scrubbed from her server. They were ostensibly about her yoga, her daughter's wedding, and her mother. According to the Inspector General, some of the limited number of emails he was able to review contained information considered top secret. Further complicating this, attempts to locate the BlackBerry devices of Clinton aides Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills have been destroyed. So those are the facts, as we know them, that look bad. But we can talk about that. But to me, the interesting thing has been Hillary's really failed attempts to push back at this. And I'll just go through the different strategies she's employed. So she tried making light of it. She joked about Snapchat. I love it. Those messages disappear all by themselves. That wasn't funny. She tried being cute. Somebody asked her if she wiped the server clean, and she replied, "What, like with a cloth or something?" Also not funny. She tried playing dumb. Jennifer Palmieri told Bloomberg Politics that Clinton, quote, didn't really think it through, which seems hard to believe because you don't decide to get your own server and then make sure the emails are irretrievable without having thought it through. She tried the vast right-wing conspiracy defense, saying, I won't pretend that this is anything other than what it is, the same old partisan games we've seen so many times before. But unfortunately, there's no Ken Starr or Newt Gingrich behind this. This is Obama administration's IG, Obama administration's Justice Department, Obama administration's FBI looking into it. So anyway, that's my short way of saying she's got some real problems. And I think that her handling of it, I think she looks like I think she looks fake. I think she looks phony. I think it looks maudlin. I think she kind of looks like a grandmother who's not hip, who's screeching, and everything about it is horrible. And I also wonder, Bill, and then I'll shut up, I think she might have learned the wrong lessons from Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton pulled off a lot of this stuff. Like, number one, he was only mostly lying about sex, and that's much less scary than lying about national security. But she doesn't have Bill Clinton's charisma or likability. In fact, there's a recent CNN poll that shows that her favorability ratings have dropped to the lowest since 2001. So she doesn't have Bill Clinton's likability, or she's not as charismatic as him. And times have changed. But I think she's trying to play the old Bill Clinton playbook. And it reminds me of George Costanza when he there's an episode where Jerry Seinfeld asked him to teach me how to beat a lie detector test. And Costanza said, it's like saying to Pavarotti, teach me to sing like you. I mean, I don't think Hillary has what Bill had. And anyway, this is a mess. We haven't talked about it that much on this show, but that's what I'm writing about this week.
Well, I agree with you that she's trying to run the Bill Clinton playbook, and I can't remember if we talked about it here, and I did write a piece along those lines for Politico a month ago, because Bill Clinton was in this exact spot in the midst of the Democratic primary and after it was over. His honesty and trustworthy poll numbers were terrible, and he ended the primary season trailing Bush and Perot in three-way trial heats. And so people were really kind of writing him off and thought that he was damaged goods. And his campaign did their own focus groups and were getting that feedback about because Jennifer Flowers had happened and the draft dodging allegations had happened, and there were some other things like the "I don't inhale" comment, and he had to explain golfing in an all-white country club. There were little things like that added to that narrative. And what they had determined through the focus groups was that it was less about the particulars of each instance. It was a general sense of, I'm not convinced that you're going to fight for me. You're just another one of those phony politicians that says nice things and at the end of the day is really all about yourself. And I think that is probably similar here too. I mean, there isn't really an allegation of what she was hiding. What was the game here? What was she trying to keep secret?
We don't know. We don't know because she scrubbed the server.
But usually, when a scandal has legs, you were able to add to that and find out what was going on.
But in this case, let's give her the benefit of the doubt and assume that she deleted 30,000 emails about yoga and her daughter's wedding and her mom. If that's true, it's still the case that she has spent 3 or 4 months now talking not about the war on women, not about how she's going to make tuition affordable, but instead about the server and really doing herself no favors in how she's handled that.
Well, this is what she's trying to do. She's trying to get. She's trying. I mean, and look. I mean, it took Bill Clinton months to get that pivot to work. Yeah, it didn't happen overnight. But the ad campaign that Hillary is doing it parallels the Bill Clinton strategy. A lot of heavy on the bio, using your personal bio to connect to how you fight for middle class families and middle class values. It's very akin. And she very steadily churns out new policy every couple of weeks or so. She did climate a couple weeks ago. She filed with student loans. There's going to be more coming there, and try to focus attention to that. And so those dueling narratives. Right.
But think about this from the standpoint of liberals and Democrats. So here you are, poised for a permanent governing presidential majority, at least. I mean, the blue wall is hard for Republicans to overcome. You've got demographic changes. I'm writing about them in my book right now. Pre-order it. Too Dumb to Fail. Are pretty daunting. It's all the trends should be going toward. And then you've got Donald Trump sucking up all the oxygen on the Republican side, the potential of that turning into a clown car. You've got all of this potential for Hillary or a Democrat to waltz into the White House for a third consecutive term. Maybe as many as 3 Supreme Court justice picks could be made during that tenure. And now you have Hillary doing this. It seems like the potential for a huge missed opportunity. If Obama had a third term, I think he probably would win it. And it really could transform the country and lock in, if Obamacare is not already locked in, immigration, everything. But I'm telling you, it's amazing how it seems like they're grasping defeat from the jaws of victory with Hillary.
I mean, neither one of us can predict certainty today. All I can say is, at the end of 1992, people still thought Bill Clinton was not honest and trustworthy. There were still concerns about that. but they thought that they believed enough that he was still going to try to do good things for them, that they're willing to put that aside. And so in Hillary's case, she does not have the same level of charisma. She's not as fresh a face, which can cut both ways. Do you think at the end of the day, if Hillary is president, she is going to fight for the policy she says she's going to fight for? And do you like those policies? Is that going to override this one, the flap over emails? You can look at it from two ways. One is, Republicans have been chasing these types of scandals on Bill Clinton and Barack Obama for a very long time, and never fully struck gold. They never either won an election campaign. They didn't stymie either of their agendas to the extent that winning the House in those cases.
We do know that Bill Clinton lied to the American public about the blue dress.
But he still was not impeached. He still got some stuff done in his second term, like the Children's Health Insurance Program, for example, even though he didn't have the Congress.
No, I'm just saying, like,
he still won the fight over.
Whitewater didn't pan out. There's a lot of scandals that the Vince Foster, but it's not like he wasn't caught in a huge scandal that he lied to the American public.
His reputation
it wasn't a wild goose chase.
But the Republicans did not get the political payoff they were looking for. They succeeded in scuffing up Bill's personal reputation, but it's not like they set the stage for legislative victory because of it. So I could see a Republican saying, "Look, we're already kind of behind the eight ball here. Hillary's already leading in the polls. We got to get some kind of narrative on her that's to our advantage. This is striking some gold. We're dragging her numbers down and making the race more competitive. But if we can't follow that up with policies that people actually like and think are better than what she's offering, is that going to be enough at the end of the day? Because you still have polls that show her beating most of the Republicans nationally. You can find polls where she doesn't in certain swing states. And any poll that this far out is not going to be determinative. But you can't say definitively this is going to be enough to allow us to win an election if GDP is still over 2.5% and job growth is at a steady clip, and Hillary's saying I'm going to do similar things to what Barack Obama's doing. And I don't trust that your policies look like George W. Bush's and those policies didn't work. You still got to deal with that problem if you're going to actually win the actual election.
Yeah, but it's not like we just put up two platforms against each other. It's why they play the game. It's why they have the election. Personality matters, and she has a horrible personality. She's not likable. She seems old, Bill. It's not going to be popular. Not going to be popular for me to say that.
Did George A.W. Bush have a fantastic personality? No, but he was seen as better than the alternative. Dukakis had a limp personality.
But guess what? If Marco
people
Rubio's
were
the nominee,
generally in favor of Reagan's policies, and Bush was seen as an extension of that, and that was sufficient. And even though Iran-Contra was lingering over his head, it wasn't like he was scandal-free. That wasn't enough because people wanted to change our policy direction.
Obama's not Reagan. And
some might disagree with that.
But even more to the point, Michael Dukakis was a pretty bad candidate, and I think that Republicans have a lot of candidates who are better than Michael Dukakis, politically speaking. He's probably a fine man. I know he picks up garbage.
People thought pretty well of Dukakis at the time in the primary. He seemed solid, good gubernatorial record, no few gaffes on the stump. He had a solid convention. Came out with a big bump. It wasn't until the summer, it wasn't until post-convention, late summer, where those perceptions began to turn. I know he was. I think he was up by like 20 points at one point. It was unbelievable. He had a big convention bump, which was overly optimistic. But still, there was a sense that Iran-Contra was still lingering, in the later part of Reagan's term, and there was some appetite for a fresh face and not just having an extension. But the GDP was solid in '88, and Iran-Contra faded, So Dukakis wasn't being buffeted by those factors anymore, and of course George H.W. brought the hammer down on ideology. There's a lot of things that could happen still where emails themselves would not be determinative in a general. Now, if they entice Biden to come in the race and puncture Hillary's inevitability, then maybe it's another story. But
I agree. I obviously everything you say is right. I mean, it's a long ball game. We're still a long way out. All those things are caveats. I think you're right. But I think it's also true to say I think this has exposed the fact that she's not a very good politician, not a very good communicator. I argue she's regressed as a communicator, not that she was ever, a great one. And I think she's a very flawed candidate, and I think it's clear that she spent the last several months on defense. And maybe that won't continue, but it's definitely a missed opportunity when Republicans are dealing with Trump. It's not been a good year for her, and I do not think she's a great political athlete. So, and this is the problem of the weak Democratic bench, and with the fact that she was sort of preordained as the nominee. I think that Democrats have a real potential to run up the score on Republicans and really change America with the Supreme Court picks. And I think that it is by no means a foregone conclusion that Hillary will win the presidency, even if she wins the nomination. Whereas I think that it could be otherwise it would be kind of their election to lose.
I'm going to give you the last word and cut things off because I am super late for my next thing.
All right. So we're both out next week.
We'll catch you in September.
Yes.
And there'll be plenty to discuss, I'm sure, when we return.
Yeah, check us out on Twitter, Facebook, pre-order the book. Look for Bill's forthcoming Politico magazine piece. And I don't know, go through some old episodes, some classic episodes, and it'll hold you over till we get back in September.
All right. Take care.
Good times. Thanks.